Good morning, Year 4. Welcome to your next reading session of this week. Today in reading, we're going to be looking at predictions, and we are looking to make predictions based on our text, The Explorer. By the end of this session, you'll be able to look for keywords or phrases in a text. You'll be able to predict what might happen from details which are stated and implied, and you'll be able to support your predictions using evidence from the text. Now, today's vocabulary words. The first one is astonishingly. And this is an adverb. It's used to modify or change the verb. And you can see that in the book quote, it's quoted by saying the buzzing was astonishingly loud. So it wasn't just a bit loud, it was extremely loud, because that's what the word astonishingly means. The definition is where something that is extremely surprising or impressive. So this person here is looking astonished. They are surprised. They are impressed. This astonishingly has 5 syllables. Astonishingly. And we could use it again by saying astonishingly, the novel is still selling 7,600 copies a year. So surprisingly, or amazingly, or impressively. Some antonyms for the word astonishingly would be common or ordinary or unusual, usual, something that isn't amazing or surprising. Now, our second word today comes from the quote, it must be a repellent. Now, this word repellent has 3 syllables, repellent, and it means where you drive away or ward something off. So you could have some mosquito repellent or some insect repellent. And the idea of this is that you spray it on yourself and it just stops those things coming towards you. So if you sprayed mosquito repellent, it would stop mosquitoes coming to you. Same with insects. And you could say they sprayed insect repellent on them. So some synonyms for this word repellent would be resistant and something proof. So it might be fly proof, for example, where it stops the flies from getting to you and getting to your skin. And that's a word in the book today. We're going to continue where we left off yesterday at the bottom of page 119, just where they met the monkeys and just where the monkey had rubbed her paws together with the ants in them. So, Con touched Fred's sleeve. Is she killing the ants? Fred watched the monkey lower her nose to her paws and sniff deeply. Is it like a perfume or a sort of drug? He said. Suddenly, all 3 monkeys, as if at a signal, turned and leapt away across the trees. Let's follow them, said Lila. It isn't easy to keep pace with monkeys if you don't happen to be one yourself, and if you haven't eaten properly for days. They were all 4 weak, and Lila's hands were shaking. Con turned pale as they jogged after the monkeys' disappearing backs. So they're trying to go after the monkeys to see what they'd done with these ants and what had happened, but because they hadn't eaten in days, they were very weak. They didn't have much energy. The monkeys leapt into the branches of the great, spreading rubber trees and halted. Bees, said Max in a self-satisfied voice. I told you! Far above their heads, so far it was blurred with distance, was a beehive. It was enormous, encased in a grey layer of resin, and the buzzing was astonishingly loud. So they found a beehive, and it was very loud. Honey ran down the side of the tree. Lila's eyes widened. She held Backer more tightly, the sloth. They don't attack sloths, do they? As they watched, the mother monkey approached the hive, broke open the protective layer, and plunged her paws into the depth. She broke off a piece of honeycomb and bit into it, dripping honey on her baby's head. The bees swarmed furiously, but didn't go close enough to sting. Lila's eyes were as wide as the sun. I think the smell on her paws meant that the bees didn't attack, she said. It must be a repellent. So the way that the monkeys rubbed the ants in their paws made the bees it was like a repellent. The bees didn't want to sting them. Let's try it, said Fred, already on his feet. But what if it only works for monkeys, said Con. Well, there's only one way to find out. He thought of dinner, which would be pineapples, if there were any left, and cocoa grubs, if they weren't. Wouldn't you like some honey? So Fred now is really thinking that he can use these ants as a repellent to get some more honey from the beehives. Just think for a minute before you... but Fred was already running. He wound his way back to the ants' nest and waited, panting, for the others to catch up. Then he laid his hands on its side. The ants swarmed onto his fingers and knuckles and wrists. It was like wearing a pair of black gloves. So now his hands and wrists are covered in ants, and he is about to go in the beehive. Now, do you think he will be able to have the same effect that the monkeys had, where it's a repellent, or do you think he might be stung? "They tickle," he said. The ants were so small it was like being covered in full stops. "Now you rub your hands," ordered Max. Quickly, like the monkeys did." A few of the ants swarmed up Fred's arms all the way to his chin, but they didn't seem disposed to bite. They didn't want to bite him. He rubbed his hands together, feeling a little guilty, and then sniffed. The smell was so strong that he gagged. "You know when they put stuff on cuts at school?" he said. "It's like that." "Disinfectant," said Lila. He rubbed his hands over his face, as he'd seen the monkey do, and up his arms. He hesitated, and then gathered more ants and rubbed the smell onto his legs and ankles too, just in case. Con pulled his hand down to her face so she could sniff. "It smells like ammonia," she said. "Like my aunt smelling salts, so it's not a very good smell." They ran back to the honey tree. Fred thought the others seemed to be giving him a wider berth than usual. "You smell like a bad idea," said Max. "Like medicine." At the foot of the tree, Fred looked up. The trunk was enormous and the bees a distant cloud. "Are you sure you don't want to stop to think for just one single second? To at least make a plan?" said Con. "I'll be fine," said Fred. He'd always loved climbing trees, that feeling of navigating an unknown land upwards. The others watched him. Lila with expectant eyes, Con with one eyebrow and her upper lip raised, Max with his finger in his nose. He seized a low branch and heaved himself up. Max cheered. Fred's legs scrabbled for purchase, and then found a knot in the bark and pushed upwards. So now he's climbing the tree. The ants are all around his body, ready to use as repellent. I wonder what might happen. He felt immediately that this was different. This was nothing like climbing at home. His muscles were weak and less at his command. His arms and legs had less pull and spring to them. It occurred to him, with a jolt, that he hadn't checked to see if the tree's wood was rotten. The tree creaked under him, loud as the hinge on the giant's gate. "Damn," he whispered, very quietly. He reached up for the next branch, and then the next, his shoes slipping and sliding onto the smoothness of the bark. "Oh, for goodness sake," he heard Con say. "He's going to get himself killed." "He'll be all right," said Lila. "Really." "What if he's not, though? It'll be even harder, stuck in this place with just the three of us." "Fred," she called, "please, just come down." Fred ignored her. He swung higher and faster. He set both feet on a thick branch and looked above his head for a good handhold. So he's in the tree now. Is he going to fall off the tree, or is he going to be safe, I wonder? Well, today's lesson we are looking at making predictions. So we are going back to this give your opinion question because we need to make sure we are really expanding our answers. Now, we know that this type of answer will ask you something, give you a box to tick, either yes, no, or maybe, and it will ask you to explain your choice fully using the evidence from the text. Now, these questions do need a long answer. So I'm going to show you today the structure that we need to start taking to really use evidence and support our answers. Because they are often worth 3 marks, so you need at least 3 points. So I'm going to look at a question that I've previously asked you, but we haven't worked through this one together. Now, this one is a general one about the story so far, not about the chapter. So my question is, do you think Max will wander off again? Yes, no, maybe. Explain your answer giving evidence from the text. Well, we can see here that we've got this huge box to fill. So I think I'm going to look at this and think, yes, I do think Max will wander off again. And then I'm going to highlight the word yes and write my answer. And I want you to let me know what you think of my answer. Do you think that's a good answer for me to just write because he's done it before? Is that good, or can I improve it? Pause the video and have a think. Give me a nod or a shake. Is this a good answer? Is it a bad answer? Now, it's not a very good answer, is it? I've got the rest of this space to fill. I haven't included evidence. I haven't explained my answer. Now, let's go back to it and think. We do think Max will wander off again. So that is going to be my opening sentence. I think Max will wander off again. Now, that's probably the easiest sentence that you will have to write, because you need to just state whether it's no or maybe or yes. If you don't think he'll wander off again, you say, I do not think Max will wander off again. And if you maybe thought he would, then you say, I think Max might wander off again. But your first sentence must always be explaining what your answer is. And then you can start to really explain it using the word because. So I'm starting to think to myself, well, what makes me think Max will wander off again? What has given me this opinion? Well, I know he's done it lots of times before. I know in the previous chapter we've read, Max had wandered off and he had found the animals because he was bored at night and he couldn't sleep. And that is going to be my next step, to really say, I think this because. You don't have to include evidence at this point. You just explain your answer. So state your answer, explain your answer. And I explained it by saying, I think this because he has already wandered off a few times. More recently, he has wandered off alone in the previous chapter when he was bored and couldn't sleep. And I put that in my inverted commas because bored and couldn't sleep was actually an piece of evidence from the text. But then you really do start to give more evidence. And I can see by my page that we had read today that Max had kept trying to explore. And I've highlighted that because now I'm starting to need to give evidence from my text. So I'm going to give my evidence by saying an example from this text, which has made me think Max will wander off again, is where the author writes, Max kept trying to explore. So what I've done so far, stated my answer, I've given a reason based on my own thoughts, my inferences from the story, then I've given my evidence. So right now I haven't done anything extra other than explain my answer, explain it further, and give evidence. Then I can tie it all together by saying my original answer. So I've chosen to write, this confirms my thoughts and makes me believe that Max will wander off again. So you can see that from the very start of my answer, where I said, because he's done it before, I've really got my structure. So I want you to think of these 4 things that you need to do when you're writing today, your predictions. First, state your answer. Then, explain your answer. Then, give evidence. And then, repeat your answer. Okay? So you can see I've done these steps here. In pink, I've explained my answer. Well, stated my answer. In green, I have explained using my knowledge. In blue, I've given an example from the text, the evidence. And in black, I have linked it back to my start question and said, this is what I think, and this confirms my thoughts and makes me believe that Max will wander off again. Okay, so today I want you to really, really try and think of your predictions in a way that you are thinking about what makes you think that. Because if you circle yes, no, or maybe, there's got to be something going on inside your brain that made you want to circle that. And that's what you'd write in the green section. If you think a certain thing, you might say Max might wander off again. But something's made you think that. You haven't just thought that. You've got a thought process behind it. I really need you to make sure that you're really trying to get that structure in there today. Remind me of the structure again. Say it to the screen. That's it. So, state your answer, explain your answer, give your evidence, and link it back to your original answer. Now, today you have got 2 prediction questions. Prediction 1 is, do you think Fred will get stung by the bees? That's going to be yes, no, or maybe. Explain your answer. Prediction 2, which you can't see right now, is do you think Fred will be safe in the trees, or might he fall out of the trees? So 2 predictions, but remember, I cannot mark your prediction as correct unless you've explained fully using the space here. And I know Layla has been really busy completing some excellent predictions. She's used all the space and she's really explained her answer using evidence. So great job, Layla. Well done. Now I've got a plenary for you here, so if you just pause the video here and have a think. Okay, so it should be everything that I've included so far that we've spoke about today. State your answer, explain, evidence, and link it back. Have a lovely rest of your day. Bye, Year 4.